I can hear something calling. It's calling me every day. If taking a chance is a crime, then I've got hell to pay. I've been walking the streets in my mind, trying to find a new day. Keep on searching until I will find, until I find a new way. I'm gonna say something, I hope you don't mind. It's time to rearrange. I walk round in circles, I'm going nowhere. It's time to make a change. Hey Shlomo, how you doing? Welcome
How
to the
are you,
show.
Charles?
Glad to have you.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, I first apologies. I know we've tried to connect a few times, and finally, I'm glad to say we are here today. So that is that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So been looking forward to this. That being said, I am familiar with you from social media, LinkedIn in particular, and I think what you do, what you're about, I think it is going to resonate with a lot of people, especially maybe some of the gentlemen, I'll say, who are, my age, that age range. So with that being said, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Shlomo. I go under the moniker either It Suits You or Dress Like Yourself Man. And right now, I make LinkedIn content and I help guys figure out and source their personal style. So, yeah, essentially what I'm doing is working with guys to show them the patterns in what they already wear and help them do that better so that they can show up as the men that they actually are and not kind of, the men that they were in the past.
Well, that's why I thought having you on would be kind of cool because with the podcast over the last couple years, a lot of talk about transformation and that whole physical transformation, whether it be weight loss or mindset. And when I came across you on LinkedIn, it started getting me to think about, you know, I don't think a lot of guys think about that, especially as we get older, right? I know my kids, especially and my wife in the wintertime, right? They'll joke around. It's like my life uniform, right? It's like a t-shirt and some sweatpants. And I think, I think what you're doing really will help resonate with guys, especially nowadays with, people looking for jobs, trying to get work. I think what you're doing is definitely a big help. So what do you find as you do this is like the biggest issue? Why don't we as guys especially like really give a damn about that aspect of it? Because it's a huge part of it, and I just think we don't think about it.
Yeah, I think there's a few factors. One of the factors that I've found that's actually kind of interesting is one of the reasons guys think they shouldn't dress well is because they don't associate it with their identity, or at least they don't think that they do. But it actually stems from guys over-identifying with the way that they dress, right? We as men, the way that we interact with the world, we really we really feel connected to that. And so a lot of guys, it's more that they identify so strongly with how they dress now that it's difficult for them to feel like they might have to give that up. And I mean, and it makes sense because if you think about it, where are most guys getting their style advice, right? They're getting it from, maybe their friends, from their spouse. Like that's a big one, right? You're getting a lot of people telling you, hey, the way you are now is not okay. You need to change, right? So that's a lot of the approach people are taking to men's style is, hey, you look kind of bad. Like we need to change that, right? So, and then of course your walls go up because you're like, no, no, this is my identity, right? Like this is my this is who I am. And and then, obviously then you go back when you're alone and you're like, I don't really like this, right? Like there's something about this that is me and I feel so connected to it, but there's something about it that's not serving me. And of course it's very painful for people to not accept you, right? Like it's very painful to have people say you need to change, right? For people to say you're not as attractive as you could be. right?
That's interesting you say that. Do you think, and again, I'll speak to it from my perspective as I'm older now. And do you think sometimes though, as guys, as we get older, do you think we start to tend not to, and this is good in some areas, right? But in the area you're talking about right now, not good, but good in a lot of other areas, right? But where we don't give a damn,
Right.
right? We don't care. Like we're comfortable with, you know, dressing the way we dress. And if people like it, great. If they don't like it, like the hell with them. Like how much of that do you think, well, how much of that do you think plays into it? But then for what you do, how do you start to kind of cross that barrier for men?
Yeah. So I think that that's a big factor, but I think like what you said, where there's kind of a positive and a negative side to it, I would say there's almost like a true and a false side to it. So a lot of the time when people say, "Oh, I don't care," what they're really kind of trying to say is, I can't. Like I can't care. Like if I go and care, it's going to be too painful, right? So a lot of guys will kind of notice themselves maybe getting older and they, maybe when they were younger, they knew how to dress and kind of throughout their years, they've, been leaning on other people to dress or they kind of haven't been dressing the way they want to. So when a guy shows up kind of sloppy and he didn't put effort into it, when people criticize the way he's dressed, it's just like, well, I don't care. So I don't have to suffer the brunt of that. But, it's very scary to go and try something and fail publicly, right? When you go out in the world, you're failing publicly. You're going out, you're saying, I put this outfit together and my intention was to look good. And when I get feedback that I don't look good, that's very painful, right? Because I tried something.
Mm.
So there's a real fear of failure. And I think that you see this across the spectrum, right? It's not just style, but I think that it's something that, first of all, it's something that affects your style, but I also think it's something that style can really help you work on and overcome in a bit of a low risk way.
Yeah, no, I think you're making a lot of valid points there, and I think it's good for guys to hear that because I think the first thing you said there was it really hit me was about you know, not saying we don't care, but maybe we really do care, but it's just that we can't accept the what people think sometimes. And like I said, sometimes I think that's a good thing, but I think when it comes to this, it's probably not a good thing. And hey, I'm going to cut something part out here, but I noticed something. I don't know if it was from your side. I don't think it was something that popped up on the screen that it was something Fireflies AI. I had
Okay.
to I had
Yeah,
to
you can
remove
kick
it
it
from
out.
the what's
That's
that?
fine. You kicked it out, you're good?
Yeah, the only reason I kicked it out, I don't care that it was what I kicked it out because it messes up the layout on the screen when
Video.
I go to
Yeah.
put everything together. So I'll work around it. But I just want to let you know I didn't I that was the only reason why I took it off of there. So
Oh, no, no, you're good. You're good. It joins automatically and that's fine.
gotcha. Okay. Yeah,
Okay,
no
hopefully that
worries.
doesn't problems for you.
So so when you are starting to have these let me start here.
Okay.
When when does a guy reach out to you? What kind of what phase are they at that they are kind of like, I need help with this? Like we reach out for help with other things, like I said, it might be our weight, our finances, things like that. What about this? When do you finally get to the somebody gets to the point where they're reaching out to you to ask for your help?
Yeah. So I mean, if I'm being honest, right, like it's not always so clear cut, but what I've found is guys will reach out to me or want to work with me when they're kind of going into a new phase in their life, and that could be different things. But like one of my clients right now, he just went through a divorce, and so he's looking to get back on the dating scene, and also he's starting a new company. So it's a little bit of that mix of factors for him. I have another client who he's, bringing his business up to the next level. He's an architect, and he's starting to work with really high level clientele. And so he wants to be able to bring his authentic self to the interaction, right? Because he's the business owner, and that gives you a little bit more leeway to be yourself. but he still wants to be very professional and also meet that higher level client where they are, right? He can't necessarily show up in a bad suit. That might work at a lower level. He's playing in the big leagues. So it's really kind of these transition points where transformation is happening anyway. And that's not to say that people don't work with me to spark their own transformations, but as far as, some of the pain points that I've seen or some of the places where I've noticed guys kind of, get that itch that they can't let go of is when they're already in when they're already in a transformation, and it's like, when I come out the other end of this, I want it to be complete.
Mm. So I'm going to get into this a little bit. Before I do, though, I was thinking what might make some sense here too is to talk a little bit about did you personally, did you always have style or did you have your
No,
own? Okay, yeah, that's
no,
interesting. So
no, 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 no,
what's the
no, no,
story
no.
there?
What's the story there? So I, yeah, growing up, I was always pretty artistic. Like I always drew, used to build Legos a lot. I was always very creative and always very visually creative. And when I actually skipped eighth grade, I skipped eighth grade, went straight to high school. And I went from having this kind of rich friend group where I was sort of the leader. I don't know if I would say like I was always the leader, but I was I was I was liked, to this new environment where suddenly I was like complete bottom of the pecking order. Actually skipped with a friend of mine. We skipped together, and he went from very quiet and introverted to like very popular. And I have always been pretty extroverted and loud, and I was just kind of annoying. People didn't really like me. So something that I latched onto, as when we're in pain, I think we try to find something to make sense of our pain, and we try to find something to fix, to get out of it, right? Like if I can fix this, then I'll be out of this painful place. So for me, because I'm so visual, I latched onto style. And part of that was because I noticed that the guys, like it was almost like everyone showed up day one just knowing what to wear. And I think everyone can relate to this at all stages of life. Obviously, I'm talking about high school, but I think everyone feels this way when they come to a new office, and there are just people who just get it, right? There's always that guy, the great hair, and he just always dresses great and he puts up the best numbers, right? There's always that someone, and you just walk in like, how do they just know? Is there like this psychic link to the universe? Like what is it that just gives people this, I don't know, this almost unfair edge? Or let's not call it unfair. I don't think that's the right word, but it can sometimes feel that way. And I kind of fixated on that. And I tried to solve that problem for a long time. And of course, on the side of that, I was doing a lot of introspection and self-development. I had to go through a lot of like very, very painful, like looking at very painful parts of myself. And I think that this process going alongside that really helped, because I think it's a lot easier to say, there's this thing about me I don't like that I can change. And that I can also blame something else, right? If I don't look good in a shirt, I can say, I don't look good in this shirt. It's not me. I'm not ugly, but I don't look good in this shirt. I can change the shirt. And I think that having that going alongside looking inside yourself and saying, okay, I'm not a bad person. There's this part of me that doesn't want the right things, quote unquote, there's this part of me that wants other things from what I want. And I can look at that and say, okay, I'm going to listen to you and I'm going to hear you out and I'm going to accept you and accept that you're a part of me, but you're still not for me, right? So you can, it almost, I don't know if it actively, it's more in retrospect. I can see how these processes going alongside each other really helped me transform, not only externally with my style, but internally with my personality. Like I really do think there was a point where it flipped from this vanity of I want to be attractive, or I want to fit in, or I want to force people to like me. I think those were a lot of things that I really wanted at that time. And looking back, it's it it was really that inside work that backed up the style. Like if I just looked better, it wouldn't really mean much.
Yeah, I can obviously relate to that. I think especially from being younger, and I do. I mean, now I think it's a little different because a lot of people work from home and stuff like that. But I do remember those phases of starting out being younger, and you go into that office and there's just those few people that right away they're the alpha, they get it. Everything is just boom, it's there. Um, where do we run risk though, for example, in those situations where we try to be something we're not, we start to see a style may look good on somebody, and I'll ask you this bluntly, like where's that line at where is there things that just look good and they'll look good in anybody, or is it the person, like how they carry it? Like where do you kind of draw those lines? Because I may see something that I think looks fantastic on somebody, and then in my mind right away I'm going, I don't know if I can pull that off. But what are the kind of do's and don'ts?
Yeah. So one of the things that I really want to empower men with is instead of seeing something and saying, I can't pull that off, being able to ask the question, how can I pull that off? What could I do that I would be able to pull that off? And I don't think it's an answer that I can give just in like one sitting,
Mhm.
because for everyone, it is kind of personal, right? I might see someone wear something really sporty. And for me, I might lean a little more refined. And so what I need to ask myself, and I think what men can ask themselves is what is it about this? Like what is it about this that I actually like? And then is there something else that has that feature that makes more sense for me? Right? And I'm not saying that's an easy question to answer because I think it does take some knowledge to back it up. And that's one of the areas that I really help with is asking those questions and also having the knowledge to help with the answer. So yeah, I'm trying to think of an example from like my own life of something that I think looks so cool and that I have to ask myself, okay, how can I make this real? Here's a good example. I consider fashion and style to be very different. I think that they tap into each other, but I don't think that they are the same thing. And I happen to like fashion on the side, right? I said I'm artistic and I find fashion very interesting as kind of a creative art. And there are some fashions that I'll see that are very avant-garde and very out there. And obviously I can't wear that, right? But I have to ask myself, how can I embody a little bit of this? How can I have a little bit of fun and do something that's a little bit outside without it and still keeping it kind of tasteful and normal, right? Like obviously normal is different based on where you live and what that means to you. So everyone's going to have kind of um their own window of what's normal. But asking yourself, what could I do that might tap into a little bit of what I like about this?
That brings up something interesting to me when you mentioned fashion. I it seems like there's always cycles, things that were in, they're out, they're back in. So I guess I'll say it like this. So what really is that us as society kind of influencing and making what's in regardless of what it looks like if I look back at me growing up, I was young but still the 70s, when I see just that hippie kind of bell bottoms, things like that. But then in the 80s we start to get to the neon brighter colors, and if you wore bell bottoms, because now you're talking about tapered legs, jeans to your ankles, right? Things like that. Like, why did it look good in the 70s but now in the 80s it doesn't look good?
Yeah, so I like to take the approach that everything can look good if done right. If done, yeah. Everything can look good if done right. what happens is we get bored. That's really it. We get bored, right? So a lot of the trend cycles, it's not necessarily that people are forcing fashions on us. It's more like there's this hunger for what's next, and it's being offered to us. Here's what's next, right? So you're right. When you look back at the 70s, like we can all kind of laugh, but I think a lot of people can really look back at a great outfit from the 70s and appreciate it in its time, right? They could say, that looked really good. And then you can look at an outfit from the 80s and go, that looked really good, right? If we're, if we're being honest, and I think sometimes you just need some of that distance, right? I I think we get lost in when things are too close. We can sometimes get lost in who we were at the time, right? Like I said, once again, the identity element. We can look back and go, "Wow, that guy was really struggling. He's not who I am anymore." And so we we project it onto what we were wearing. Oh God, I look so weird. It's like, yeah, if you stepped out today, you would look really weird. But back then you might have looked really good. And it's more this embarrassment of who you were before your transformation to whoever you are now. Um, I also think that, and like you said with the trend cycle, I think there is a concept of classic, right? People like to talk about classic and sort of moving beyond trends. And in a way, that's a really great way to get around things. But I would say that trends are something you can't really escape. So even classic is going to change. So classic doesn't stay in one place. Like you said, obviously in the 70s, bell bottoms would have been at the very drastic end of things, right? And then pants get more tapered. And then if you think about the 90s, things get a little more baggy towards the end of the 80s and the 90s. And then when the 2000s come around, it goes a little bit in a few directions of super duper baggy. And then also to skinny jeans, right? That's around the time skinny jeans become more mainstream. And now we're circling back around to wider fits. That's what's coming in currently. And if you think about it, when you think of classic, and I like to, this is something I've been bringing up with clients recently, you can look at the extremes, right? When we think of a decade, we think a lot of the extremes, but not everyone was leaning into the extremes, right? So when something new comes in, instead of saying, okay, I need to keep up with this trend, you can say, okay, what's kind of the underlying pattern here? So, okay, pants are getting slimmer, right? Okay, so I can go for a slim fit. I don't need to go for a skinny. I don't need to go to that extreme,
Mm.
right? I don't need to go all the way to the left. And then when pants get wider, you can say, okay, pants are getting wider. I don't need to go super baggy. I can just go for a straight fit, right? And I think a lot of guys would really benefit from staying in that middle zone where it's kind of safe, not really leaning into one side or the other. I see a lot of times guys who lean into one side hard and then they don't really ever grow out of it. I see a lot of guys in my generation. I'm a millennial, 31, and I see a lot of guys who it's like their pants kept getting skinnier throughout the like 2004 to 2014 era, or now I guess it's 2024, so really 2014. Yeah, something there. And they just kind of kept leaning into that. And now it's like their suit pants are skinny. You can see their kneecaps and like everything is so skinny. And they don't realize that that's an extreme, right?
Mhm.
And like that's good and normal to them. Like they can't see beyond that. And I think it's really important to take a step back and say, what is extreme and what's kind of in the middle, and what can I do to ride that middle? Unless obviously, if you're someone who wants to ride the extremes, I'm someone like that. I like to ride the extremes, so I like to play around with that and pick what that is. But if you're just a normal guy and you're not looking to make a massive statement, you can follow trends in that way by saying, okay, trends leaning slimmer, let's do slim. Trends are leaning wider, let's do straight, and kind of just ride that middle zone.
So that leads me to this. I've noticed, and I've known a few people that have actually used it. My son, actually, he's 26. He was using this for a while. I see all these, they're like these services out there like Stitch Fix and other things like that. Seems like that's becoming more popular nowadays where, they kind of guess a little bit at your style, and seems like they'll send you things. I know anytime I've seen anything like my son would have gotten, I kind of go, looks good. Don't know if he would have picked it himself, but like where did this start to come from, and how are, it seems like they're doing well, those types of businesses. Where does that type of business come in, and what differentiates you from what you do?
Yeah, no, I think those services are really great. I think they're an important stepping stone to kind of get to the place where my work starts. And that's not to say that you can't skip that step, but I think for a lot of guys, they get curious about style, and that's a really nice way to dip your toes in. And I just I think that they can get you to a good point. And I kind of use these four categories of men's style, which is looks good, feels good. Sorry, looks bad, feels bad, right? So you don't look great, you don't feel great about how you look. Looks good, feels bad. So that's kind of you look good, you're getting compliments, but it doesn't feel right for you, right? Looks bad, feels good. I think a lot of guys end up in this camp where they don't look great, but they've got confidence. I think we talked about this a little earlier. And then, where I'm looking to get people is the looks great, feels great camp. So for some guys, Stitch Fix might get them to the looks great, feels great, and that's awesome. But I think more times than not, it's going to get them to a bit more of a looks great or looks good, feels not as good. It's never really going to hone in and take the time to understand your story. It's going to sort of just give you generic pieces that look better than what you had. So I think it's a really important upgrade, and I think it a lot of times can help on that journey, but I don't know if it's necessarily the destination, if that
Hmm.
makes sense. As
No,
far as yeah, sorry.
no, it does. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, like, as far as where the need came from, I think that, the rise of the internet, Reddit, forums, and Instagram, maybe YouTube, are pretty responsible for this. I think men's style has been booming over the last, 2 decades, and more of an awareness around male attractiveness. I think it's become a little bit more more mainstream. I think probably when you were growing up, and I know when I was growing up, caring about your appearance was blasé. It was not masculine. It was not really allowed. And I think a lot of guys are realizing they don't feel great about that. That like it's not leaving them feeling good about themselves. And I also hope that a lot of guys are realizing that that was a blip. If you look back at history, guys cared a lot about their appearance and they really thought about it. And it's only sort of like when the 60s hit and there was a bit more of like a deconstruction and rejection of, the 1950s like suit and
Mm.
tie that that they sort of pivoted hard into you shouldn't care about how you look. And then it somehow became a masculine ideal. I don't know how, but it just that's what it became, is like you shouldn't care. And that's only that's been like less than 60 years. That's a blip in the grand scheme of time,
Mm.
right? So guys not caring about style for 60 years does not mean it is not a masculine thing to care about style. If history teaches us anything, it's that it's always been a concern of men how they look and show up in the world.
That's really, I'm actually really glad you brought that up. I mean, I think that's really powerful, and it I think that translates to a lot of things, right? Because when you think about it, not caring about style, right? Like, and I think you would agree, like we've gotten to a point sometimes where not just men, people in general, I mean, they don't care about not just their style, they don't care about their health. And
Yeah.
that's supposed to be okay, right? If you say anything to anyone about, hey, their look in any way, you're
Yeah.
considered that's not right. I tell people a lot when I was going through my own struggles, a few years ago, I kind of wish somebody would have just got me aside and said, you know what, hey, wise up here. You look a mess. You got to start getting back into it. And I think, again, I think what you do is important, because I think somebody that may not be feeling good about themselves physically, I think you start to, it's more than it's beyond clothes. I think what you're doing, I think you really start to help men take that next step, right? Because now
Yeah.
you're getting men to a point where maybe they see some clothes that they want to pull off, and that means they have to do something else about their physical appearance to make that work, right? They need to get healthier. So I think you're doing really, really good work, and it's valuable work that people need. So as far as what you do, your business, is this all you do? How's it going? Like, is you have a
Yeah.
lot of clients?
So I know I make it sound that way. I am still building. I'm very blessed that I am full. I have very wonderful clients that I'm working with right now, and I'm very blessed in that way. But I'm not someone who likes to just like play it up. I'm not going to pretend that like it isn't work and it isn't a challenge and that it's always, full steam ahead. But but yeah, I'm very blessed to be in the place that I am right now, and I am doing this full time. I was working. I mean, do you want to go through like my whole work history? Like how far back do
No,
you want?
no, no. I was just more curious
I
about
just yeah, no,
if this is what you're doing now. Is this like a full-time thing? And I hope it is. I think that's great.
yeah. Yeah, it is my full-time thing. I through my 20s, I was really scared to really deep dive, like to really just dive headfirst into this. This has been something I've wanted to do for over a decade and something that I've been involved in for close to two um decade and a half. And and it's been something that I've really wanted to do. And I recently, well, I guess technically a little over a year ago, I was working a job that I knew was just, it could end any day. I knew I was going to get let go. The industry that I was in it was gone. And I knew that it was just kind of, it could be tomorrow, it could be 6 months from now that I could be let go. And that's really when I started, like I said, this is it. Like I'm 31. This is my time to actually just do it. Like instead of sitting around being scared that I can't do this, like I'm just gonna go do it. And it's funny because like I think one of the most painful things for me about not building this business is that so much of what style and after style fitness really gave me was this, like you can do it, and so much of the insecurities that you have are in your head, and and so much of what you perceive as confidence in other people is also just in your head, right? Everyone has fear, and the people who do great things, it's not because they're better than you or different than you or they have something that you're missing. It's just because they went out and did it. And and so it was very painful for me for a long time to be working other jobs and not doing this thing that I really wanted to do, and this venture that I felt was my gift that I could give to the world. And and so yeah, I finally just said, no, I'm going to do this. And even then I was scared to really fully commit. Um, and I was job searching. I finally was let go and I was job searching, and I had a meeting with someone and they said, hey, okay, so if you're job searching, you should do this, 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 and this, and you should start a LinkedIn profile and you should start posting content about the kind of work that you want to do. And I said, I'm posting content about style. Like I'm building a business right now. Like you basically want me to build a second business. And then at the end of that business, I get a job. So I'm going to build two businesses. One of my businesses, the goal is for it to be my dream business and actually help people and make an impact in the world in the way that I want to, right? Like really help people. Um, or I get a job. And it was like that moment where I just said, no, like I'm just going to do this full time. Like I was able to just push that fear away and say, like, I really don't want that. This is really what I want. And I'm gonna fight for it, right? And I think if I hadn't gone through my style journey, I would have never gotten there, because style was one of the first places where I said, like, no, this is what I want, and I'm gonna do it. Like I can go out into the world and say, and know I look good, and someone can say, ugh, you look like crap, but I can go, that's your opinion. That's great. But I know I look good, and I'm gonna bring that confidence with me. And and I think, yeah, I mean, that's I think the sort of power that we underestimate in our appearance in general.
Man, that was actually really, really I love how you opened up there, man, and really went into that. That was really, really good. And I think that right there is what I mean, that's what this is all about for me with the show, is to really help people through the stories of other people kind of find that power and find their truth.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think you're doing a fantastic job. And I think, you're going to end up helping a lot of people, not just with style, but I think when people see and hear your story, I think it gives that person who hears it that day, they may be in a similar situation, different industry, different point in life, but it makes people take that step. And I think that's what's important about these conversations. So, what I wanted to end with was I know right now, I think a lot of guys, especially out there looking for work, things like that. Any quick tips you could give for someone who's on the job search right now as far as the way they should be going into their interviews and the way they should be dressing?
Yeah. I would say if you can do a little bit of research, that's always good. Find out what people wear to this job and wear that, right? Keep it simple, right? Try not to do anything too crazy. If you have a choice between a pattern shirt and a plain shirt, wear the plain shirt, right? Just go simple, go easy. You're not trying to, you don't need to make a big statement. You're really trying to just draw attention to yourself. I think it's really important when you are trying to dress well that for the most part, amplifying yourself and drawing attention to your face is the biggest focus. I think a lot of guys will almost try to hide behind their clothes, right? They'll try to go into the interview maybe in something really flashy or out there, because they almost don't want the interviewer to see who they really are. So go in something simple. Um, if you don't own something simple, I mean, you can find a white shirt or a light blue shirt pretty much anywhere. You know, um, if you have dark hair, go buy a pair of dark pants. If you have lighter hair, buy a pair of, maybe lighter gray pants and get a nice shoe. Shoes, I think, I would say shoes are a big one. Guys are really not so great at shoes. And go for something really classic. Don't, not something like bike toe, not something, square toed. Go for something with a classic round toe, maybe a lace up. Those are always safe. Maybe a boot, a loafer. Keep it very classic. You know, if you need to, reference old pictures, right? Like reference older fashions. I think a lot of menswear has really stayed the same over the years. So go look back and see what's survived over the decades and grab something like that. Um, but yeah, once again, if you can do research. Show up the way that the people there dress, right? If everyone wears a polo shirt and chinos, wear a polo shirt and chinos. Don't show up in a suit. That might be weird,
Mm.
right? If everyone's wearing suits, don't show up in a polo shirt and chinos, right? And also remember that whatever you wore to the interview, that's probably why they hired you. So make sure that you have more of that when you
Mm.
start your job, right? Don't show up day one looking completely different, which I noticed the hypocrisy because I used to wear crazy stuff to work. Um, but but it was fashion, but it was good. Yeah. So for the most part, remember why they hired you and yeah, just try to it's okay to tailor it to the job because that's really what you're trying to do. That doesn't mean to completely mute yourself, right? You can always find ways to express yourself even when you're dressing for somebody else. But yeah, just go simple, go easy. How's that?
Well, no, I think that's awesome, man. And I think guys, especially guys, I think they need to hear it. Well, lastly, where can folks get a hold of you if they want to get your services?
Yes, so LinkedIn is the best place to find me right now. My LinkedIn is Shlomo Homnick. It is the one with the hot pink. I have a few. Um, I think I have like a LinkedIn from my mortgage days. And the one that you want it has the hot pink background. And my profile picture will probably continue to have a hot pink background because real men wear pink. No, real men don't wear pink. Real men wear whatever makes sense for them. Real men wear what they want to wear. And yeah, so LinkedIn is a great place to find me. I do have an Instagram and a I do have an Instagram, and I have a few other accounts, and you can definitely link those below in the show notes. I can send those to you, and you can link those below.
Hmm.
But the best place to reach me is LinkedIn for sure. Or
Fantastic.
my email, or you can just shoot me an email at dresslikeyourselfman@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure to include all of that in the show notes so that people can get a hold of you. And listen, I appreciate your time. I'm glad we were finally able to
Yeah, this
connect.
was really fun. I know I just talked the whole time, but we'll get to we've had the opportunity to talk off screen. So I know this was more of an interview style. I don't feel as bad yammering on and stealing the spotlight. But I appreciate you giving me this platform, and I appreciate that, it was a long time figuring it out, and I appreciate that you really kept with it, and that we made this happen, because this was really fun. This was
Yeah.
really great, and I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity.
Oh, please. And listen, don't feel bad. I think, I learned a long time ago, the best advice I think I was given, and I try to do this with the show, is shut up and listen. And that's what it's about. It's about the guests like yourself, their stories, their advice. And, people don't need to hear from me. I talk enough. I'm
I
glad
mean,
glad you
yeah,
were able to do this.
you ask really, really beautiful, thoughtful questions. So that's a big deal. That's a big deal. You asked great questions. I thought it was great.
Well, listen, I'm glad it was a good experience. I hope it resonates with a lot of people who tune in for it. And I hope that people reach out to you for some advice because, again, I think a lot of people could use it and I think it'll be helpful. So, with that being
Yeah.
said, listen, I appreciate everybody joining us today. Shlomo, I appreciate your time and you jumping on. So thank you very much. And check out Shlomo and what he has to offer. And again, thanks everyone for tuning in for the Bare Essentials. Really appreciate it. Take care, everyone. Bye.
This has been the Bare Essentials. Thanks for listening. And remember, never hibernate on your goals.